Welcome back everyone. Today I am working on making a yarn ball piñata. So you can see I've kind of gotten a start here. I didn't have a balloon. If you have a balloon, this will be easier. You can inflate the balloon and then start this process. I did not, so I'm using 2 bowls, and since I need it done at kind of the same time, you could get away with 1 bowl, but I actually used 2 identical bowls so that I could speed up the process. So what you'll need is, you can either use Elmer's glue, or I am using flour and water as kind of my glue paste, and I'm just mixing that in an old margarine tin. You'll also need some string, and then you can either use newspaper, or I'm using cut up magazine pieces about an inch, I don't know, roughly an inch in width. They're all kind of varied on mine. I know some people say you have to be exact. I'm not that person. If you watch this channel, you know I'm not that person. But what you'll do, and what I did, is I took a plastic bag. You could also use saran wrap to cover your bowl, just to make sure the paper doesn't stick to the bowl. If you have a balloon, you don't have to worry about this. You can just put it directly on the balloon because you'll pop the balloon at the end. But I went ahead and did my 2 halves here. And now that I have the first layer on there and it's dry, which you'll kind of want to leave it to dry overnight, and what I did is I layered these on like in one direction, and then I flipped it in the other direction just to kind of get the first layer on. Now I'm going to take them off of the bowls so I can start combining them. So you can kind of see what we have here. If you wanted to, you can try to take this plastic bag off. You just have to be very careful while you're pulling. And why you might want to do this is it might allow more air circulation, so this can dry out better. Because the outside is completely dry, but the inside is a little bit damp still. So like I said, if you have a balloon, this will make it easier to get a circular object. I did not, so I used bags. So now once I have that off, you can just see it's half a bowl. So then I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with the other side. Slowly take this off. And I tucked the bag underneath, so I should be extra careful so it doesn't rip the inside of this. So you can see I just have 2 identical bowls here, just to reiterate that. But now, once I get these bags out, and if you have a balloon, you want to leave a hole to add the candy in. So what I'm actually going to do is I might add my candy in before I close this up the rest of the way. Otherwise, I'll need to leave a hole to add it in, which might work also because it doesn't, mine isn't exactly fitting into a circle, so you can kind of see there's a gap here where I could add candy in if I'm going to string it up like that, but you can see it's generally a ball shape. So we'll zoom in and continue working. So right now I am mixing my paste. I just have flour and a little bit of water in here, if you can kind of see. I'm just going to go ahead and mix that up. I'll probably need a little more water than I have in here, but you'll want it to be a thick paste. So this is a little too thick. It's more of a dough. So I'll thin it out and then we'll get started. Now you can kind of see I just stacked my 2 halves together. And next is where your string comes in. So you could start by just putting strips around this circle here, but I'm actually going to use my string next, and what the string does is it increases the strength of your piñata because it really wouldn't take much to break just the paper mache otherwise. Also, it gives you a way to hang up your piñata. Otherwise, if you just punch a hole through this, it might not hang very well. So we'll just take this string. You could use yarn or whatever you have on hand. So we'll take this and just kind of wrap it around, if I can get it to stay. All right, now that we have our string on here, and you'll just kind of want to gently place it around, you know, this kind of star pattern like I did. And then you have a string at the top, so you can hang it by this. or you can grab onto any of these other points if you want to. Next, we'll need our strips of paper, and you'll need your glue, which you kind of showed. It's just a thicker, it's like a thick glue paste. And this is just flour and water, so you can keep adding each until you get the consistency you want. Like I said, make sure you leave kind of a hole to get candy in, otherwise dump it in before you combine the two halves. But we'll go ahead and get started. So, and go ahead and take my butter knife out here. I was just using that to mix. Another good idea is just to put either some newspaper or some more magazine paper down just to protect your counter. It doesn't really matter since it's just flour and water, but it'll make the cleanup a little bit easier. So we'll go ahead and take our strip and just dip that in, and your hands will get really pretty nasty because you're going to need both of them. So if you are choosing to use like Elmer's glue or something like that, I would recommend wearing gloves just because you don't need that glue all over your hands. So we're just going to get this nice and coated, but you want to strip off the excess. And then we're going to start placing it. And I'm actually going to start placing like this way, and I want to overlap that gap to make sure that that doesn't show up later. Another idea you could do is kind of cut off, if it's too jagged here, cut off some of those ends just to make sure it's nice and smooth, and I might do that now. Once you've done that, and the jagged edges could be avoided if you were to like lift the bowl up on a stand, then you could smooth it down better. I did not do that, so you can learn from my mistakes here, but not too hard to trim that off. So like I said, you'll just want to keep coating these, and we'll want to cover our entire ball here. So it will get messy because we will turn it upside down and cover the other side as well. As you can see, we want to make sure our string can still come out, which it is here. So we'll go ahead and continue doing this until the whole thing is covered. And keep in mind, you want to start this a few days before you actually need it because this will take several days to dry. Alright, so once you have another layer on, you can still see I have a hole here that I can get candy into. If you don't want to deal with that, go ahead and put it in right away. But you can see we just keep layering it on to try and crisscross it to try and make it as strong as possible. I still have my string over here. I might hang this up if I can to try and help it dry out faster. Another option is maybe hair dry it, but don't get too close because you will burn it. All of this is flammable. So if you were to like put it in the oven, you'd barely want it on because it's just, it'll bake basically. But we'll want to let this dry preferably overnight. And then we can kind of gauge where it's at. You could go ahead and fill it with candy. And we'll do one final layer, just kind of going until your paste is out so it's nice and thick and strong, and you'll want to cover up this hole then once you put candy in. And then we'll go ahead and decorate, but make sure it is dry before you start on the next layer, otherwise it will lose its strength and it'll just kind of stay soggy. So stay tuned, we'll check back in as soon as this is dry. Alright, if your piñata is still not quite dry and you want to hurry along a little bit more, you can take a hair dryer, just kind of do it on low. Again, don't get too close as you don't want to burn it, you just want to try and dry it out. So I might try and put some air in through the hole that I left open just to try and dry it out. Mostly it's dry, I have one kind of soft spot on the top. And I probably could have avoided this had I either hung it up or set it on something, but so far it is holding up when I pick it up. So we're just going to try and dry it out, and then we'll add some candy. Once you've made sure it's dry, we're going to go ahead and start taking our candy and just putting it in there. You can leave a bigger hole if you want to try and make it easier. But we wanted to have a smaller one just so it's easier to patch up. So we'll go ahead and fill it with as much candy or goodies as you want. And then we'll continue with the paper mache, and you're just going to keep covering the same spot with paper mache. If you get really desperate and you're running out of time, you could always try and use something like duct tape. But keep in mind that won't break the same as the paper mache will. So we'll just keep putting a bunch of candy in here, and then we're going to go ahead and close it up, like I said, with additional paper mache. And we'll let this dry overnight, and then hopefully tomorrow morning we will be able to decorate it. After filling with candy or treats or whatever other trinkets you want in your piñata, we're going to add one more layer just to kind of cover up that hole that we made to add the candy. You could also add some extra string if you want to reinforce that area by tying string underneath. So we'll add an extra layer and we'll let that dry overnight. You want to make sure that is dry to the touch. We'll then cover it or paint it in whatever color you want. I chose to use crepe paper streamers because I had that on hand. But like I said, you could go ahead and paint that or use any kind of tissue paper or anything like that. Finally, I just wrapped it. You could, like I said, try and tape it down or something. Wrapping worked fine. Finally, we're going to use yarn, so pick whatever yarn color you want and wrap it like a yarn ball. So if you started with a yarn ball, make it look like that. You can also use part of the yarn from your yarn ball to hang it if you forgot to leave a space for that string to come out, or you can just use it in addition for extra carrying capacity. Hopefully this helped you create a fun cat party or yarn ball piñata. You could also use this for any other circular object like a soccer ball, anything like that. If you liked this, don't forget to like and subscribe, and be sure to check out our other cat party videos.